After secretly loving my rival for 8 years, he finally married me out of spite after his beloved left the country. For over a year of marriage, I had been trying hard to imitate his beloved, just to catch his eye. I divorced Lillian before she returned to the country. After accidentally overhearing a conversation between Ethan and his friend, I didn't linger. I printed the divorce agreement overnight and ran away. Later, Ethan came to my door, his eyes red as he stared at my belly. "Serena, come back with me." Outside the study, I held the prepared hangover soup, ready to push the door open, when Ryan's voice came from inside. "Lillian is going back to her country. When are you and Serena getting divorced?" My fingers trembled on the doorknob, and in that moment, I lost the courage to push the door open. Lillian is the white moonlight that Ethan has cherished for many years. If it weren't for her arguing with Ethan and going abroad, he would never have stubbornly married me. I bit my lower lip tightly, my heart suddenly racing. Ethan chuckled lightly. "Lillian left before returning home." My nose tinged with bitterness, and I almost knocked the detox soup on the tray to the ground. "Serena is as dumb as a rock, she isn't even half as smart as Lillian." His nonchalant tone reveals his indifference and disdain for this marriage. At that moment, I truly wished I had misheard, but that familiar voice really was his. I withdrew my hand that was resting on the door in disappointment and poured all the hangover soup I had made for him into the sink, leaving not a single drop. With my palm pressed against my lower abdomen, it's been about a month, and nothing is visible. But I know there is a small life inside that belongs to me and Ethan. What should I do about the kids after I divorce Ethan? Tears streamed down my cheeks, and when I raised my hand to wipe them away, it only made it worse. "Lillian is back. Isn't it normal for Ethan to want a divorce? I found out about the child last week. I never knew how to bring it up with Ethan. After we got married, he told me more than once that he doesn't like kids." The feeling of grievance was magnified infinitely, and I tried to comfort myself, but the tears still wouldn't stop. By the time Ethan and Ryan came downstairs, there were still a few sparkling tears on my face. Ethan frowned, the impatience in his eyes clearly visible. "Serena, why are you crying?" I turned my back, trying to calm my emotions, not wanting him to notice anything unusual. I just couldn't help it while watching a drama. Ethan didn't ask much, casually throwing out a teasing remark. "Crying over this? What a drama queen." Ryan awkwardly whispered to him, "Aren't you going to comfort her? She's already crying." My eyes are sore and swollen, and the corners of my mouth curl into a mocking smile. How could Ethan possibly comfort me? Deep down, I know it's impossible, yet I can't help but hope he might say a word of consolation. Even a casual remark would do. Sure enough, his footsteps did not pause. It wasn't me who made him cry, so what was there to comfort? I knew I couldn't have any expectations of him. In his eyes, my tears were just pretentious. If it were Lillian crying, he would rush to comfort her immediately. I have completely come to terms with reality. Ethan is destined not to love me. He is like a stone wrapped in cold ice. Not only can't he be warmed, but he will also freeze me. I don't want to like him anymore. Since we're both getting a divorce, why don't I bring it up first, Ethan? He was sitting in the entryway getting ready to change his shoes when he heard my voice and walked back in. "What now?" I smile worse than I cry, choking back tears as I utter 3 words, "Let's get a divorce." The atmosphere froze for a few seconds. I could clearly hear my own heartbeat, feeling the pain of my heart tearing apart, not regretting saying those 3 words at all. Ethan's face showed no emotion as he approached me, his steps firm, and said in a low voice, "Serena, say that again." I took a deep breath and exhaled, "Ethan, let's get a divorce." After I said this, the drunkenness on Ethan completely dissipated, revealing a suffocating chill that was quite terrifying. Ryan noticed something was off and stepped forward to remind him, "Don't scare her, just talk nicely." Ethan shrugged off Ryan's hand, smiled lightly a few times, and then slowly spoke, "Didn't you hear her say she wants a divorce?" Looking at the smile on his face, I understood that he was truly looking forward to this day. The marriage I had longed for was a kind of bondage for Ethan. He walked up to me, looking down at me from a height. "When I come back tonight, you better let me really see the divorce agreement." Ethan's two sentences echoed in my ears for a long time, each carrying a lethal impact on me. I divorced her before Lillian returned to the country. When I come back tonight, you'd better let me actually see the divorce agreement. After he left, the next second I collapsed onto the ground, crying out loud, my tears blurring my vision. Liking someone may only take a second, but giving up on someone is truly difficult. It took me more than 8 years to take this step of giving up on Ethan. If it weren't for what he said today, I don't know when I would have taken this step. It is said that people like to gauge the depth of love through the pain of separation. The ache in my heart now is 100 times more painful than I imagined. I don't want to disappoint Ethan, so I contacted a lawyer to have the divorce agreement printed before he comes home. Letting him go, while also letting myself go. For more than a year, I have been living by imitating Lillian, and I am truly exhausted. I have even forgotten what the original Serena liked and what she was supposed to be like. Imitating what Lillian liked and caring about what Ethan liked became my habit after marriage. I didn't want to see Ethan, so I threw the divorce agreement in the bedroom and left. I didn't dare to tell my parents about the divorce. At that time, I insisted on marrying Ethan despite their objections, which made them extremely angry and helpless. I went alone and bought a ticket to Yun City. I had lived there for a while, before my grandfather passed away. After he left, the old house in Jiang City became empty. Before getting on the plane, I received a call from Ethan. Perhaps he wanted to discuss the divorce. There's no need, my lawyer will negotiate with him. With a prenuptial agreement, the division of property should be straightforward. The only difficulty left is the child in my womb. After thinking for a long time, I didn't know how to tell him about this matter, but now I don't have to struggle anymore. If he doesn't want to know, then let him never find out that this child existed. It took almost 6 hours to reach Yun City, and it was deep night when I got off the plane. Unlike City A, the pace of life in Yun City is very slow, and there is hardly any nightlife. The whole city is quiet, and I can even hear the sound of the wind blowing the fallen leaves. While taking a taxi, I saw more than a dozen missed calls. It was Ethan calling, and just as I was hesitating whether to call back, he called again, so I answered. The voice on the other end of the phone was deep and hoarse, gently asking me, "Have you had dinner?" He used to ask this often, usually when he was busy working late and wouldn't be home for dinner. Ethan's tone gave me the illusion that nothing had happened during the day. I lowered my gaze and asked him what was wrong. Ethan's next words made me regret picking up his call. "Lillian is back, do you have time tomorrow?" No. My instinctive reaction was no. Upon hearing her name, I panicked and hung up the phone, then added Ethan to my blacklist. So his good tone and good attitude are just because she has returned, and he can't wait to marry the one he loves, right? On the way back to the old house, my memories drifted back to over 20 years ago. Our two families have been close friends for generations, and we often spent time together since childhood. When we were kids, Ethan always looked at me with disdain. He didn't like me following him and often warned me, "I don't have a sister, don't think that just because my mom asked me to take care of you, you are my sister. Don't follow me, Serena, you're so annoying. You're not allowed to call me brother, I don't know you." The first person to appear when I needed him the most was him. At 6 years old, I was so scared by his family's dog that I didn't know what to do. When Ethan showed up, I thought he would use this opportunity to chase me away. He didn't, he stood in front of me. "Fuguway, go back. Serena is afraid of you." When I was 8, I started learning to skateboard. Aunt Jiang said that the two kids should learn together. Ethan was more talented than me, learning faster and mastering the skills well. When I was about to fall, he would appear. "If I hadn't held on to you, you would have cried from falling." At 12 years old, after arguing with my parents and having nowhere to go, it was Ethan who carefully comforted me and bought me a doll to cheer me up. When I was 14, I got my period and was too scared to go out of the bathroom after school. Ethan came in with a sanitary pad after confirming that no one was in the restroom. At 15, we learned horseback riding together, and the black horse next to us got startled and nearly crashed into me, it was Ethan who saved me again. I never thought there would be someone else between us. When exactly did the Serena he spoke of turn into Lillian? It was probably when I started high school. When I was a child, I didn't understand what liking someone meant, I just got used to being by his side. By the time I entered high school and Ethan began to receive love letters one after another, my feelings deep down started to change. He would stuff the love letters he received into my arms to show off after school. Serena, look at the love letters I got today. I stared at those few pink envelopes, feeling inexplicably dazed. Go away, don't shove everything at me. Ethan smiled smugly, glancing at me. Serena, you're so fierce, no wonder no one sends you love letters. I can't say why I hate the way he shows off when he receives love letters. It's just a love letter, what's there to be proud of? Later, during the school basketball tournament, the love letters he received increased from a few to a small stack. The uncomfortable feeling intensified. I naively thought it was because I had never received any, so I probably wanted love letters a little. I began to feel a bit curious about how one could receive a love letter to satisfy the heart's desires of a 16-year-old girl. Ethan gained many admirers while playing basketball. I can play badminton, so I go play badminton whenever I have free time during breaks. With my exceptional badminton skills, I managed to defeat 2 boys every lunch break. By the end of the semester, I had a group of younger brothers who called me bro. Ethan sometimes comes to watch me play badminton. I raise my racket and lean it on my shoulder. How about it? I'm good at badminton, right? He laughed so hard he could hardly breathe, giving me a thumbs up to encourage me. Great, just a few more smashes and it will be perfect. Man. Woman. Ha 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 ha. I didn't successfully get the pink envelope, and N's title spread throughout the grade. Some girls even thought there was really a boy who was great at playing badminton. The wish in the pink envelope was temporarily set aside, as my academic burden grew heavier, leaving me with no energy to figure out how to fulfill this desire. I could only be forced to help Ethan deal with stack after stack of love letters every day after school, watching him show off without being able to retaliate. Until the end of the first semester of my sophomore year, I finally found a pink envelope in the drawer. The girl's secret was complete. I curled my lips into a smile, let out a long breath, and ran downstairs with the envelope in hand. Not far away on the playground, Ethan and Ryan finished playing ball and were drinking water. A girl with a high ponytail appeared and sweetly called out, "Ethan." Her skin was very fair, and the school uniform did not conceal her grace. The moment she appeared, she captured the attention of everyone on the playground. The pink envelope crumpled in my palm, and I didn't continue walking forward. I knew her, Lillian. She had been the host during the event, and her beauty was captivating, making it hard to look away. Ethan turned his back to me and took the yellow envelope from Lillian's hand. The two of them looked very familiar, sitting in the chair, chatting and laughing. The curve of my lips vanished, and I quietly left. That wave of emotion surged up more intensely than usual, and I hardly paid attention in class that afternoon. After school, I finished my duty, and Ethan, as usual, stuffed a pile of love letters into my hands. Serena helped me deal with them, there were too many. Among the pink envelopes were a few purple ones and 2 blue ones. The one yellow envelope from Lillian was notably absent. Where did the yellow envelope go? Did Ethan keep it? I got angry and threw the envelope back at him, untouched. You deal with it. I'm not a trash can. A few envelopes fell to the ground, and Ethan squatted down to pick them up, complaining to me, "You've got such a bad temper, who annoyed you today?" At night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, my mind filled with the image of Ethan and Lillian laughing together. I finally realized that the sour feeling of loss was love. Unfortunately, it was too late. Ethan and Lillian were getting closer and closer. For a while, he stopped waiting for me after school. I was rehearsing for the welcome party with Lillian. So you went back by yourself. Does he really want to be some kind of host? I felt unhappy and bit my lip without saying anything. If I spoke up, we wouldn't even be able to be friends anymore. Throughout high school, I didn't watch any TV dramas because during that time, the popularity of childhood sweethearts couldn't compete with the plot twists of fate. Since the last time I threw the love letter back at him, Ethan hasn't given me any more love letters to deal with. I don't need to ask, I know for sure that he must have handed the love letter to Lillian to handle. She is more suited to deal with these love letters than I am. My attention was drawn to Ethan's situation, and my ranking dropped significantly during the monthly exam. The homeroom teacher specifically called me to the office, and when I came out, I saw Ethan grinning. Did Oldley scold you? Do you need me to help you catch up on your studies? I maintained a stern face and pushed aside this innocent culprit, saying coldly, no need. Today is really unlucky. First, my grades dropped, and I was called to the office for a scolding. Then it was our group's turn for punishment duty. After finishing the duty, I ran into a certain busy person in the hallway. Ethan leaned against the corridor, the afterglow of the sunset casting a warm light on his fair face. I pretended not to see him and turned directly into the stairwell. Ethan caught up. I specifically waited for you after school. Serena, are you blind? Can't you see a living person like me? I quickened my pace, a bit childish and sarcastic. I didn't ask you to wait for me. Why isn't the busy person going to rehearsal today? Ethan took out a stack of test papers from his backpack. I took a leave, so you can look at the test papers and notes first. If you don't understand, I'll explain it to you this weekend. Hearing the words, notebook, I disdainfully remarked, come on. I can't understand your scribbles. He sighed and explained helplessly, I borrowed it from Lillian, her handwriting is beautiful, you'll understand it. I paused on the stairs, my eyes slightly reddening. Ethan couldn't see my expression, as he praised Lillian's achievements. Lillian's ranking is about the same as yours used to be, and this time she almost got a perfect score in English. Her notes are very detailed. The decline in my grades was already enough to make me feel miserable. I looked up, choking back tears, and shouted at him, I don't need her notes. You didn't have to bring them over specially. At 17, I was still young, unable to control my emotions, and didn't know how to salvage the feelings I had missed. My competitive spirit was ignited, and later I studied hard, not to mention Lillian. My grades even caught up to Ethan's. After class, Ethan leaned over to me with a flattering smile, Serena, can I borrow your exam paper? I happily waved my hand and lent it to him. Your grades are about the same as mine, and you still want to borrow my paper? Ethan took the paper, his tone relaxed. I'm borrowing it for Lillian, she thinks my handwriting is ugly. I performed a face-changing act, my smile suddenly froze and disappeared, and I really wanted to snatch the test paper back. Then I remembered the notes he had borrowed from me before. Although I didn't use them, Lillian was also willing to lend me hers. So what was there to stop me from letting her see my test paper? A month before the college entrance exam, I received a friend request from Lillian. Maintaining a hostile attitude, I directly ignored her request, pretending I hadn't seen it. Instead of that, I might as well solve a couple more math problems. My grades had recently been surpassed by that dog Ethan. I didn't expect her to come directly to the classroom to confront me after school on Monday. Lillian smiled slightly. Serena, I added you on Facebook before, but you didn't accept. I'm sorry for coming to find you in the classroom. Knowing it was an apology, she still came. Facing her harmless-looking face, I couldn't bring myself to be harsh and weakly said, I haven't checked my phone lately, what do you need from me? Lillian returned the exam paper to me, along with a VIP concert ticket. Thank you for lending me your exam paper. After the college entrance examination, can I invite you to watch the concert together? I was just about to refuse when I caught a glimpse of the words on the concert ticket. It was the singer I had liked for a long time, and even though I hired 5 people to help me snag tickets the day before yesterday, we still couldn't get any. No. Of course. I can transfer you the ticket money, just consider it as me buying it, or if you want something else, I can trade with you. In the end, Lillian still didn't take my money. She has a very nice and gentle personality. She always asks me questions on Facebook, and since she charged for the tickets, I felt embarrassed not to reply to her. I thought it was no surprise that Ethan liked this kind of girl. I started to find Lillian cute, and by the time I realized it, I had already been infiltrated by the enemy. On Friday, it was Ethan's turn to be on duty. He tugged at the strap of my backpack, not letting me leave. "Why haven't you been waiting for me to walk by myself lately? It's really strange. He has Lillian waiting for him, so why does he want me to wait?" I swatted away his hand that was grabbing my backpack strap. "You're so annoying, don't stop me from going back to study." He put down the broom in his hand and chased me to the door. "Serena, how are you planning to fill out your volunteer application?" This was a question I had been thinking about for a long time and was ready to ask him. I gazed into his deep, clear peach blossom eyes and saw my own reflection in my school uniform, lost in thought. A voice deep inside me whispered, "Should I fight for myself once more?" "Serena, Ethan, let's go buy milk tea together?" Lillian's appearance made the words I was about to say instantly choke in my throat, stuck there like a lump. "I don't really want to drink. I have duty, so it might be a while." The voices of Ethan and I sounded at the same time, and Lillian walked over to him, saying with a hint of regret, "Isn't Serena drinking? Then I'll wait for Ethan to do his duty." I hate my quick tongue, but I'm glad I refused. Otherwise, I would have been stuck awkwardly between the two of them like the last few times. In order to discuss the college application, I specially invited Ryan to dinner and bribed him with a limited edition gaming keyboard. The day I received the admission notice, I breathed a sigh of relief. Lillian didn't get into a university, but Ethan and I did. I didn't really want to go to a university. In my own opinion, why university was my dream. I hesitated for a long time when filling out my application, and in a moment of strange inspiration, I ended up writing a university. I still remember the day I received the admission notice, how I jumped and danced with joy. I thought it was worth giving up Yunnan University for Ethan. After all these years, I regret it now. University didn't completely separate Ethan and Lillian. At a university, my relationship with Ethan has never returned to the way it was before. In fact, it has even started to become a bit confrontational. I often regret that I quarreled with Ethan, ruining what was originally a good relationship. It was a winning hand, but I messed it up myself. After going to college, Ethan and Lillian kept in touch. A few times when I had meals with him in the cafeteria, he was always looking down to reply to messages. "Ethan, what are you laughing at like that?" Lillian sent a message, "I'll show you later." No need. Lillian must have sent him some funny joke. She often sent me messages too. When we were in high school and saw each other often, I was afraid of awkwardness, so I always replied to her. Who knew she seemed a bit clueless? Even after graduating high school, she still sent messages. I replied a few times, but then stopped. "I have no mood to eat, so I get up to leave. I really don't understand what you're so happy about with the group message." Ethan put away his phone, furrowing his brows as he stared at me. "Then why don't you send me a message that's not a group text?" I snorted coldly and walked away. Whenever his mouth uttered Lillian's name, I couldn't help but feel jealous. To avoid him noticing my abnormality, I always found various excuses to keep myself busy and avoid him. In the middle of the night, I couldn't help but open his Instagram and sneak a peek repeatedly. Luckily, he doesn't use Facebook, otherwise, there would be visitor records. Yun City, Hospital. The doctor looked at me seriously and repeatedly confirmed, "You have had ovarian cysts before, and given your physical condition, having a child is very difficult. Are you sure you don't want one? Are you sure?" I feel very confused inside, always hesitating between being born and being aborted. Should I really be born? As the doctor looked into the torment within me, he added, "If you decide to terminate, it's not that you won't have the possibility of getting pregnant again, but you need to consider the consequences carefully." In the end, I chose to give birth to this child. He is mine alone, and I have the ability to live away from Ethan. In the few days since I arrived in Cloud City, I have purchased many new pieces of furniture and daily necessities. The house has been cleaned up quite a bit, and I have started to tidy up the yard. The busy life allows me to temporarily set aside everything that happened in City A. As I swung the hoe in the yard, ready to get to work, a joyful voice came from behind. "Serena? You're back?" The man was dressed in sportswear, with tousled hair partially covering his eyebrows, and beneath it were a pair of obsidian-like peach blossom eyes. I furrowed my brows slightly, carefully examining his face, trying to remember who he was. He noticed the confusion on my face and introduced himself. "It's me, Henry." "Henry." I silently repeated his name in my heart, put down the hoe, stood up, and walked towards him. I almost didn't recognize him. After a few years, the little chubby one had become thin. To be precise, it has been almost 10 years since we last met. We used to play together every summer when I visited my grandfather's house. After my grandfather passed away, I stopped coming to Yun City, and the two of us lost contact. In the afternoon, he helped me deal with the weeds in the yard, and we talked about many things from our childhood, the atmosphere no longer awkward as it had been at the beginning. He took off his gloves, patted the dust off his clothes, and asked me, "Serena, are you planning to stay in Cloud City for a long time?" I nodded and told him, "Pretty much. Cloud City is nice, the air is fresh, and I can temporarily find some peace." Henry invited me to his house for dinner. I initially wanted to decline, but he insisted quite firmly. Upon entering, I stood awkwardly at the entrance and asked him, "Are your parents home? Is it inappropriate for me to disturb you like this?" Henry found it amusing, his peach blossom eyes squinting with a smile as he teased me. "Weren't you always coming over for meals before? Why are you scared now?" I used to run over to play with Henry, and my uncle and aunt would always invite me to stay for dinner. I shyly mumbled, "I was so young back then, it's been too long now." Uncle and aunt went on a business trip, and for dinner, it was just Henry and me. He talked to me a lot about his life over the past few years, and I listened quietly, occasionally chiming in. I guess I'm an avoidant personality. If he doesn't ask, I won't bring up my own matters at all. Henry's eyes are very much like Ethan's, with deep, affectionate peach blossom eyes, and ink-colored pupils. They seem to have a magical quality. If you stare for too long, it's easy to get lost in them. He noticed I was quiet, so to liven up the atmosphere, he grabbed a bottle of red wine. "How about we celebrate? It's been a long time since we last met. I can drink." Instinctively, I accepted his action without refusal, and when the wine glass was in my hand, I suddenly realized, I might not be able to drink. Henry stared at me, surprised, and asked, "Is it an alcohol allergy? Or are you feeling unwell?" I didn't hide the fact that I was pregnant from him and told him straightforwardly that I was pregnant. He blinked in surprise, his gaze shifting from my face to my abdomen, and he asked me in a daze when I was getting married. I didn't mention Ethan much, just said that I was in the process of getting a divorce, and that it would be finalized once the cooling-off period was over. I received a call from an unknown number, and the girl's voice was sweet and delicate. It was Lillian calling. She attended university in City C, and under my deliberate distancing, we haven't met often. I was surprised when she called. She still called me Serena just like before, as if we were close. "Serena, I'm back in the country. How have you been lately?" How should I answer her question? To be honest, I've been doing very poorly. Even if I escape from City A and come to a place where Ethan has never lived, I am always reminded of him by many things in life. Especially recently, Henry often comes to my house to help, bringing snacks and fruits. Looking at his peach blossom eyes, I always find myself lost in thought. Lillian should have met Ethan, right? She knows that Ethan and I are divorced, so why is she calling me? It's quite good. Is there something going on? She hesitated, and I heard a clattering sound from the other end of the phone. After a while, Ethan's murky voice came through. "You see, she's doing well, there's no need to disturb her." The call was hung up, and I hung my head, my heart aching with numbness. Outside the window, the bright moon hung high, while dark clouds drifted across the pitch-black sky, obscuring the moonlight. At 10 o'clock at night, Ethan and Lillian were together. The icy tears dripped onto my arm, and although I had long been mentally prepared, I was still caught off guard at this moment. He couldn't wait to be with Lillian, not even waiting for our divorce cooling-off period to pass. That night I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, just like the day I caught Lillian sending love letters to Ethan. Childhood sweethearts really can't compete with fate. The next morning, Henry appeared at my doorstep again. He was carrying a basket of fruit and greeted me. "You look so listless. My friend is having an art exhibition, and I want to invite you to check it out." I got into the car with Henry. According to him, his friend is hosting a mother and baby themed art exhibition this time. Most of the people at the scene were girls, and in the center of the exhibition hall was a huge model of a uterus, with a baby made of rubber in the middle. He stared at the model for a long time and asked me, "Serena, do you really have to have the baby?" I didn't hesitate and nodded in response, "Yes, this might be my only chance to be a mother. My original family is great, and I do not feel afraid of having my own children. I occasionally worry whether the child will want a father after they are born. I feel very guilty about this." I began to deliberately distance myself from Henry. I am a very slow and dull person, and during this time, I also sensed the feelings he had hidden in his heart. His intentional and unintentional words, along with his frequent visits every few days. At the beginning, he only said to take a long vacation, feeling bored and worried that it would be inconvenient for me, a pregnant woman, to be home alone. Later, he researched various early pregnancy knowledge and insisted on driving me to my prenatal checkups. I understand now, his peach blossom eyes truly hide deep affection. His love makes me want to avoid it. I never thought he would like me. If possible, I just want Ethan to like me, and that would be enough. Sometimes when I open the door, there are fruits and vegetables that Henry bought outside. I know that he might be as stubborn as I was when I liked Ethan back then. This kind of obsessive feeling will lead to no outcome. When he came to see me again, I asked him directly if he liked me. His answer was very firm, without a trace of hesitation. "Yes, Serena, you forgot that when we played house as kids, I thought that when we grew up, it turns out he also had someone he liked since childhood, just like me? It is a cruel thing to be disliked by the person you like, but dragging it out and playing Tai Chi would be even more cruel for Henry." As someone with an avoidant personality, I did not shy away from the problem in front of me this time. "You also said it was when you were young, Henry. I won't like it, and I never will." His smile froze for a moment, his eyes reddened, feeling like he was about to cry any second. I understand his feelings right now, but if it were me, I would have preferred Ethan to have clearly rejected me from the start rather than ending up as a couple who ultimately goes their separate ways. For more than a year, I tried hard to be like Lillian. Ethan might have seen the shadow of the white moonlight in me, and he played the role of a qualified husband as well. Everything was a dream, and in the end, I was trapped in that dream, unable to escape, with only I unable to forget. Henry's tears never fell. He stood quietly in place and said to me, "Then let's be friends, at least we are still friends, right?" He left, his figure graceful and unrestrained, without a trace of reluctance. I felt a sense of relief as I closed the heavy wooden door. A few days of peace had barely settled in when Ethan used his assistant's phone to call my number, shattering my tranquil life. His voice was deep, with a chilling tone that softly called my name. "Serena." It felt like the calm before a storm, giving me a sense of an impending downpour. A strong sense of unease was hard to suppress. Ethan only spoke in this tone when he was very angry. I had no words, only listened as he continued, "You didn't go home, where did you hide?" My heart skipped a beat, and my first reaction was that Ethan had told my parents about the divorce. No, if he had, my parents should have called me by now. I calmed down and responded to him, "What does it matter where I'm going? Anyway, it's none of your business since they're getting a divorce." Ethan's patience wore thin, and he sneered, questioning me. "So when are you coming back to handle the divorce procedures? I packed your things for you, you can figure out a way to take them." It turns out he's urging me to finalize the divorce to facilitate his relationship with Lillian. My gaze is dim and lifeless. The person he likes is not me. Being liked by someone you don't like is a kind of torment. Let him have what he wants. I don't want the things anymore. You can throw them away or do whatever you like. In a few days, I will go back to handle the divorce procedures. A gentle female voice on Ethan's phone urged him from the side, "Ethan, I've told you not to be with her." Before hanging up, Ethan let out a good, and my heart was once again torn apart. They really are stuck together all the time. I recall the time when Lillian went abroad. A friend told me that Ethan got drunk at the bar for some reason and had a conflict with the young master of the Zhou family, which turned physical. At 1 o'clock in the morning, I changed my clothes and ran all the way to the police station to protect him. The young master of the Zhou family initially insisted on not settling, but later the police said that both sides had fought, and if they didn't settle, they would both have to be locked up. The young master of the Zhou family had just finished, and Ethan had a scrape on his forehead, his face flushed, reeking of alcohol. I threw him into the back seat and muttered in disgust, "Smells terrible, drunkard." Ethan was really drunk. Hearing this, he sniffed himself and shook his head, saying, "Not smelly, not smelly." I teased him about his poor drinking habits, that he would actually get violent when drunk. If it weren't for the fact that the young master of the Zhou family was in the wrong, he would be spending the night in the police station. Ethan propped himself up with one hand, sitting up and leaning forward, his dazed eyes looking at me in the driver's seat. "Serena, it's one thing for you not to pity me, but you even look down on me." Seeing the scrape on his forehead did make my heart ache. But when I saw the young master of the Zhou family with a bruised face looking like a pig's head, my little bit of sympathy vanished completely. I heard about Lillian going abroad. It's probably inevitable that his beloved is no longer sad. Now the two of us can barely be considered to share the same plight. I'm a bit better off than Ethan, as my beloved is still in the country. I feigned comfort to this drunkard. "I pity you. Who said I don't feel sorry for you?" His body went limp, as if he had no bones, leaning against the back seat, his tone languid, "Then marry me." I gripped the steering wheel tightly, slammed on the brakes, and the car came to a sudden stop by the roadside. My palms were sweaty, and blood oozed from the wound on Ethan's forehead. His eyes revealed arrogance as he lazily lay back, "Drunk, it's over, I'm disfigured, all because of you, no one wants me anymore." I nervously unbuckled my seatbelt to check on his injuries in the back seat, the smell of alcohol on him wafting into my nostrils, reaching the roof of my mouth. Ethan kept complaining, "I have no one who wants me, do you want to marry me?" His peach blossom eyes were filled with moisture, and I thought tonight, the one who would get drunk and lose his head wouldn't be just Ethan. I nodded foolishly, incredulously opening my mouth, "Okay, I will marry you." I didn't know who he took me for that night. Ethan's tongue carried the bitter taste of alcohol, making my intoxication even stronger. I thought he would forget about it after he sobered up, so I avoided him for a few days after I sent him home. Ethan showed up downstairs at my place with the household registration book and called me, "Serena, come downstairs to get the certificate." I didn't return to City A, Ethan chased me to Cloud City. After having dinner, I went out for a walk as usual and ran into Henry, who was also out for a walk and getting ready to go home. "Serena, how have you been lately? I feel like you've lost weight since we last met." Actually, it hasn't been long, it's only been 4 days since we last saw each other." I awkwardly nodded and unconsciously quickened my pace. Henry walked slowly beside me, and we exchanged no words. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. When I saw the white villa not far away, I felt a sense of comfort. I would soon be home and could escape this moment. I never expected the more awkward situation to come later. When I saw the tall and elegant figure at the door, I was caught in a dilemma. Ethan, the person I least wanted to see in the world, appeared at my doorstep. Henry followed my gaze and saw Ethan. "Serena, it seems someone has come to find you." I was about to explain Ethan's identity to Henry. Ethan walked over to where we were. Ethan's expression was cold and stern, his thin lips pressed into a straight line, and there was no warmth in his ink-colored peach blossom eyes. "Serena, come here." He looked very frightening, and I shrank back, which only increased Ethan's disgust. Ethan inched closer to me, his gaze casually sweeping over Henry beside me. "Aren't you going to introduce him?" "Who is this man?" Henry spoke up before I could, introducing himself. "I am currently Serena's friend." The smell of gunpowder filled the air, and Ethan felt like a ticking time bomb, ready to explode at any moment. He didn't even glance at Henry, reaching out to grip my arm and pull me to his side. I am her legal husband. Henry curled his lips into a faint smile, his gentle and affectionate peach blossom eyes from the past carrying a hint of danger and provocation. I heard from Serena that you are about to get a divorce. I felt Ethan's grip on my hand tighten, causing me to wince in pain. His deep voice concealed a hint of displeasure. We're not leaving now, she and I have some private matters to discuss. Ethan ignored my wishes and pulled me away. I stumbled a few steps and almost fell. A sharp pain shot through my ankle, and I couldn't help but gasp. Ethan paused for a moment but ultimately said nothing and continued to walk with me. Henry couldn't stand it any longer and spoke up to stop him. Can't you see she doesn't want to go with you? Ethan's sharp gaze met mine. Our matters are not for an outsider like you to comment on. Henry pulled my hand away, his voice tinged with slight anger. She's a pregnant woman with a sprained ankle. Do you find it amusing to drag her along? Done. Ethan's originally gloomy expression softened a bit, his gaze blank and dazed as he stood there, his eyes flickering over to look at me. Are you pregnant? The child is mine? Henry's fist landed on Ethan's face, and the two began to wrestle, the scene spiraling out of control. Serena is blind to her feelings for you. The child isn't yours. Could it be mine? Ethan is quite skilled at fighting. Aside from not reacting to those initial punches, he quickly gained the upper hand. The baby in my wife's belly is definitely mine, and our marital issues are none of your business. The situation gradually spiraled out of control. I endured the pain in my ankle and went up to separate the two. Henry, you go back first. I'll talk to him. Hearing me let Henry go, Ethan cast a smug glance at him. I sighed and could only let Ethan into the house first. As soon as he entered, it was as if he had become a different person, pressing me down on the sofa, constantly scrutinizing every part of me, especially my belly. How's your foot? I'll take you to the hospital to have it checked out. Strange. Didn't Ethan say he didn't want children? I waved my hand to indicate that I was fine, then asked him, if we get a divorce, you don't have to worry about the child. Before I could finish my sentence, Ethan lunged at me and hugged me tightly, pulling me into his embrace. Let's not get divorced, Serena. Can we not get divorced? He humbly pleaded with me, tightening his grip on my hand as if he were holding some rare treasure, unwilling to let go. This time it was my turn to be stunned. If it's because of the child, you really don't have to give up the person you like to be with me. Anyway, he didn't want a child either, and I don't want to live that kind of life anymore. Ethan let go of me, his affectionate gaze lingering on my face. The person I like is you. My pupils dilated, and my heart raced unnaturally. I repeatedly confirmed in my mind what I had heard. Ethan said he liked me? I was on edge, and my words started to stumble. Don't you like Lillian? I waited too long for his words of affection. I thought I would never have the chance to hear them again. Ethan's face turned as dark as a pot's bottom, his resentful gaze could not be hidden, and he complained, didn't you already know? She likes Ryan, why would I like her? Lillian likes Ryan? I feel like I've stumbled upon some big scoop, instantly imagining a novel plot, and I can't believe I asked Ethan again, you're not saying you like me because she doesn't like you and I'm pregnant, are you? Ethan's face darkened even more, his mouth twitching slightly, awkwardly turning his head away from me. No, I have always liked you since a long time ago. It was visibly clear that a blush spread across his face, even the tips of his ears turned red. Under my severe interrogation, Ethan confessed that Lillian had been asking him for help to pursue Ryan since high school. In exchange, the price was that Lillian had to help him pursue me. Ethan buried his head in my neck, his warm breath brushing against my skin. You're such a blockhead. I'll wait for you after school to teach you how to solve problems, and you won't even acknowledge me. According to Ethan, everything between us has become my fault as an avoidant personality. I remembered the words I heard that day in the study, questioning him. You clearly said that you would divorce as soon as Lillian came back. Ethan placed his hand on my belly, raising an eyebrow. Did you hear that? Then why didn't you hear the second half clearly? I told Ryan that divorce is impossible in the next life. After I said goodbye to Henry, I returned to City A with Ethan. I remained skeptical about what he said regarding his feelings for me. It wasn't until Ethan dug out one item after another about me from the study that I began to reconsider. The hair ties I hadn't seen since middle school, photos from the sports meet, the trinkets I threw away, and so on, all stuffed in his study. I held the plush pendant, curiously asking him, "Ethan, why have you never told me this, you mute? You've made me worry for so many years for nothing. If you hadn't spoken up, we would have really missed out on our marriage." Ethan suddenly blushed to the roots of his ears, snatched the pendant from my hand, and stuffed it into the box. His voice was very soft. "In high school, you always had this feeling of wanting to outdo me in studying. I thought you didn't care about me. Are you going to kill him with studying?" "Alright, I admit there's a bit of that. Lillian and Ryan don't seem to be together." Ethan told me that times have changed. After Lillian returned to the country, she completely ignored Ryan, and it was Ryan who found various excuses to approach her. Since we were friends, and the misunderstanding had been cleared up, we gathered together for a meal. Lillian complained to me, "You two really have similar personalities, both are the stubborn type, and I couldn't stop Ethan's mouth when he called you." Ethan's expression stiffened, fearing that I might misunderstand something again, and he shifted the topic to someone else. "I can't compare to Ryan when it comes to being a stubborn old mule. You should go treat him when you have the time." Lillian glared at Ethan fiercely, half jokingly and half threateningly said, "If you don't speak, no one will think you're mute. Be careful, or I'll send the entire chat history to Serena." As she finished speaking, Ethan closed his mouth. I stopped my chopsticks and looked at Lillian. "Didn't you send it to the group? Have you two been talking about something I don't know?" She shook her head and said it wasn't a mass message. "I only found out today that Lillian had sent them all specifically to me." She threw me the old phone she had brought, which was filled with chat records between her and Ethan since high school. The content was mostly Lillian complaining about how useless Ethan was, unable to even pursue a girl. There was no romantic implication at all, just a sense of disdain. Flipping further down, I found that she probably really likes Ryan, even more than I ever did for Ethan. Unfortunately, the flowers have feelings, but the flowing water is indifferent. I have a crush on Ethan, and it's somewhat a case of both of us being unable to speak up and making ourselves suffer. Lillian's open affection is truly tragic. Not long after, Lillian went abroad again, not mentioning Ryan even once before she left. However, she said she would come back to attend the full moon celebration for Ethan's child.